Hello there. It's Mike here with Savage Kingdom's role-playing game and Fire in the Head Productions. Thought I'd start the video slightly differently, although I'm wearing kind of the same hat that I usually do. So this video is about the orders and sects of the Savage Kingdom's role-playing game of Savage Kingdom's 3rd edition, particularly those included in the core rulebook. So, right. So the orders and sects of Savage Kingdoms are things that allow player characters, and obviously tons of non-player characters, but player characters to become members of. So there's kind of two ways in Savage Kingdoms to kind of represent a character class, because in a lot of classic fantasy tabletop role-playing games, particularly Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, etc., there are things called classes, right? So Savage Kingdoms doesn't use classes. It was originally not even a class-based system at all. It did have suggested things called life paths, which are just kind of suggested builds for characters. However, in 3rd edition, they're exciting because it's gone over quite well. We have callings. So callings are not quite classes, but kind of close. The reason I say kinda is when you choose a calling, and I know I've done videos about callings before, but just to reiterate, if you were to choose, say, assassin, the assassin calling, that means that that's just kind of how you're called to be an assassin. That's kind of how you're slanted. It doesn't mean necessarily that that's all you are. And so what that gives you is that you have favored talents, favored weaknesses, just like your race and class or race and culture choice in Savage Kingdoms, which is really your first primary choice, actually, because that's how you come in kicking and screaming into the world, is your race and culture. And then you would choose your calling next. The Savage Kingdoms 3rd edition, you don't have to choose a calling. You can be old school SK from 2014 when you didn't have callings at all, and you just built the character the way you wanted to. So you can still do that. The cool thing about callings is that you can still do exactly that. It's just giving you some, like, if you do some things here, you get some added benefit to that. Talents that an assassin would probably learn, or you start with some skills that the assassin would learn, and even some gear and equipment. So anyway, why are you talking about callings, might you ask, when this video is about the orders and sects and other elite organizations of the Savage Kingdom setting, Mr. Mike? Well, I'll tell you why, because that's a long way to get to the fact that to replicate something that's like a class that a lot of people gravitate to, there's two ways in Savage Kingdoms. Probably already said all that, but one is through your calling. Number two is an order or sect, a secret organization that you could belong to. You don't have to choose that either. In fact, it is a talent known as elite affiliation or priest. So the elite affiliation talent, it's only a base cost of 2. The reason I made it kind of low is I wanted more people to explore these cool little orders and sects that I've painstakingly created. Um, so and then you could even, there's a couple of races and callings that even reduce that to 1, I believe. Or the priest talent. So the reason there's 2 different ways is, and you'll see as I go through the list. I'm going to go through the list here in a second of orders and sects. So you take the elite affiliation talent. That's one, and then you choose what, if you qualify, what order or sect or secret organization. They're all printed out here from the core rulebook master chart. That you want to be a member of, and there's prerequisites. Some are fairly strict. Most others are kind of loose. The ones that are kind of loose are the ones that you might expect to be loose, such as the Pirates of the Crimson Skull. Even though that's kind of an elite fleet of pirates, they're still, they'll pretty much take just about anyone to be a pirate of the Crimson Skull. The Shadow Hand is kind of a thiefy underground Laurentian a secret organization of thieves and assassins based in the Laurentian Empire. They'll take most anyone, but they want you to have some gift at stealth and information gathering, and then etc. So, but a lot of these do require, such as the Order of the Golden Crucible, for example. Order of the Shadow Knights, the Dark She could be members of, the Durgar Runesmiths, that you have to be a Durgar. Some of those require a little bit high level. The Iron Legion definitely requires, that's the select Praetorian Guard sworn to defend the Emperor and capital of the Laurentian Empire. So some of those, Green Knights of Cormac, Knights of the Sword and Rose require some more strict prerequisites, as one might imagine. They are supposed to be elite orders. So all of these you can. It used to be that you couldn't start, and I think without looking in the book and trying to remember my own writing through all the edits and playtests, I think you could start with pretty much. You can qualify at the beginning of character creation to be a member of pretty much every sect, maybe except for the Iron Legion, but I think you can probably do that too. The Iron Legion. So so yeah, I'm just going to go through the list of orders and sects in the Savage Kingdoms core rulebook. That's coming out. Well, that's actually already out in PDF form. We're still waiting on the hardcover to get released. They're a bit behind with their the printers because they're all like just at half staff right now. So, all right. So, elite affiliation or priest talent is what you have to choose to gain one of the following in addition to the prerequisite that I just mentioned. So here's a list of the master, say in alphabetical order. So it's just all alphabetical. All right, number one is Blood Disciples. The Blood Disciples are a select group of elite vampiric warriors serving the Malovian king, the king of Malovia, King Voltimir, Voltimir von Zurich, who's the current king. Some people say he's a vampire. He's lived over 120 years, very suspicious as a human. Doesn't look like he's much older than 60 at the most. That's a bit suspicious. Outlived 8 queens, I think is the lore. Also very suspicious. Probably a vampire. The Blood Disciples originally were an elite group of really kind of like knights almost, but, kind of shadowy knight, kind of assassin knights. They'll do anything. They're called the Blood Disciples because most of them, actually pretty much all of them eventually in the higher ranks are vampires. They all take the dark gift or the kiss of night and become vampires. That's kind of a Malovian thing. That's how some nobles become immortal, is that they'll give up their humanity, some say their souls, to become immortal in the form of a vampire. That's one of the cheapest and really one of the few known ways of doing it in a fairly low to mid magic setting such as Savage Kingdoms. It makes it very interesting. But you could become a member of a Blood Disciple. You don't have to start as a vampire, but eventually you have to take the Dark Gift, or they will, at the very least, banish you, and at most you will become dinner for the senior members. Yes. So that's the Blood Disciples. Number two is the Circle of the Raven, another very elite, mysterious order. The Circle of the Raven is an elite coven of witches and sorceresses dedicated to a night goddess. This night goddess in particular is Luella Ravendark from Kimreth, from the Kimrethi people. Kimrethi. Um, Luella, or Luella Ravendark is her kind of full name or title, is a night goddess. Some people associate her with evil and wickedness, but it's a little deeper than that. It's not that black and white in this setting, and particularly in that culture. So night is just as necessary as day to make the world life go on. So that's just kind of her domain. And so the Circle of the Raven are these elite, like I said, elite coven of witches and sorceresses who were dedicated to her in particular. They are kind of a fracture group, a female friend. They're all female, by the way. The fracture group of the Druidic Order. So they're kind of associated with them, but they're also kind of at odds with them sometimes. Not all out open hatred and war, but there's a little bit of enmity between the two. So yeah, that's a cool one. Number three, Company of the Black Lion. The Company of the Black Lion is a widely spread band of mercenaries serving the highest bidder. So, widely spread band of mercenaries serving the highest bidder. Uh, Bidder, not bitter. Bidder, people who bid, one whom bids. So, they are as it says, they're a mercenary group, but they're pretty widespread across Astagonia, particularly, which is the western continent, which is covered in the core rule book. You see them in the eastern continent, some, but not nearly as much. Some in Hassan, and rarely, if ever, really in Imanju. So there's another kind of big mercenary group over there that kind of does a lot of that, called the Order of the Scarlet Griffin. So, but anyway, this is Company of the Black Lion. It's a good way to, if you want to play a mercenary who's a little bit more of a part of a somewhat organized group with captains and commanders of different units. And, kings will hire them out, chieftains or just some wealthy merchant. And they're not really loyal to any crown or throne. They really just are loyal to coin. So, so yeah, it's kind of your classic sort of black mercenary company. Company of the Black Lion. Number three, Cult of Gorgothon. The Cult of Gorgothon. So there's a talent called cultist, which allows you to be a member of some weird cult or even create your cult. And there's a lot of hints in the setting of different cults. So this one actually finally spelled out, wrote it all out because it's interesting. It's one of the larger cults. It's called the cult of Gorgothon. Gorgothon was the fallen god of Rodan. So a dark deity, sometimes known as the drowned god or the stillborn god. He's the one who created or corrupted the Gorgons, which you may or may not know in the Savage Kingdom setting. The Gorgon is actually a type of creature. It's like a whole theme of creatures, a whole race of creatures, if you will, that are so they're like half, usually twisted. So like hydras or chimeras, um, centaurs. Some people even say are Gorgons, although some say they're fae. So anything that's kind of half man, half something, or even half another creature, typically from in the real world terms like Greek mythology, those are considered gorgons in Savage Kingdoms. And this cult is an underground cult worshiping the fallen god of the Gorgons, which is Gorgothon. Um, yeah, so whether Gorgothon exists or not, or ever did, or still does, doesn't really matter. The fact is, this cult gets together and they feel like they can gain power, and they're into forbidden knowledge and learning, dark sorceries and that kind of thing. So yeah, interesting. Number five, the Druidic Order. The Druidic Order. The Druidic Order is technically a couple of different orders, but it's all game mechanically all kind of follows the same one. I think there's the Order of the Sacred Oak and the Grey Brotherhood. So they are an elite group of shamanic priests serving the Garanic gods and spirits. And yes, they're based anyway, loosely off of historical druids, Celtic druids. So that's a good way to be. They're pretty potent, pretty powerful. They're really the premier organized priest of the northwestern cultures, the Garans and the Garanic peoples of the Emerald Isles and the Kimrith and even Brithia. So yeah. All right, number six, the Duergar Runesmiths. Duergar Runesmiths. Durgar or Duergar. They're a secretive order of mystic smiths from Thrimnor and Uldarak. Secretive elite order of mystic smiths from Thrimnor and Uldarak. Wow, it's a tongue twister. So they're smiths in general. They're blacksmiths, but are also armor smiths. Some focus with. So yeah, just in general, craftsmen. But they have a mystical slant to them. They learn the ancient and magical runes of the Duergar people that eventually humans kind of learned, and some of the northern languages used to write their languages out. These runes. So they learn to make craft things very secret and empower them with magic through for the power of runes. So if you're interested in playing something like that, it's very cool. So yeah, the next one is Emerald Harpers, the Emerald Harpers, or the Order of the Emerald Harp. So members of the Emerald Harp, or Emerald Harpers, they are elite bards, lore masters, and messengers who travel widely abroad. They're mostly predominant in the northwest of Astagonia, the western continent, but they can be seen pretty much in most parts, if not all parts of the continent at some degree of that continent. So this is if you want to be a bar, there's freelance bards and skalds in the setting. There's no doubt. Um, but if you want to be a member of a group that's right, kind of more connected, it's kind of they're sort of they broke away from the Druidic order a long time ago. Um, they're kind of associated with the Green Knights of Cormac, which I'll get to in a second. So they're kind of cool. Yeah, if you want to play a really elite bard or a lore master or even a messenger, they're like travel a lot. A lot of times there's a master harper and an apprentice harper that travels in pairs. So yeah, they're kind of cool. They wear emerald green cloaks. They play harp as their main instrument. It's their title. All right, next one is the Golden Legion. The Golden Legion is a hand-chosen band of warriors who seek the defeat of all Gorgons. So they go way back. They still wear. They're called Golden Legion because their armor typically is golden. It's not actual gold. That would be ridiculous. But it's typically brass or bronze. This very antiquated armor. They still wear it proudly because it's very symbolic. A lot of it's still very well made and kept from back in the ancient time. And the reason they do is because it reminds them of the time when the Gorgons were more spread across the continent, and mankind was actively having to do more battle with them more openly. So, yeah, so that's a good if you want to play someone who is a Gorgon hunter and a member of kind of this hand-chosen band of warriors to hunt them down. That's a good way to do it. The Golden Legion. All right, the next one is the Green Knights of Cormac, or just the Green Knights. The Green Knights of Cormac are a mysterious elite band of hunter knights and protectors of the wild. So if you're getting a Green Knight vibe, Arthurian Green Knight vibe, you're right on the right path. That's pretty much what where I'm getting that inspiration from, mixed in with the setting of the world of this world, of course, of not this world, of the Savage Kingdom's world. So they are Cormac is a chief male god of the Gerenic people. So he's very much a masculine god of hunting and war. He's associated with beast as well, not only from the hunting aspect, but from the strength and the primal aspect of things. So the Green Knights are kind of dedicated not only to him, really, to the idea of just protecting nature in general, but not like protecting nature, but like like a little harder on the heart. They're warriors. They're like pretty serious. They're not just like stop it. So those are the Green Knights of Cormac. They're one of my favorite. I haven't really seen enough. Kind of disappointed that not many people have played those that I've seen. So, but they're cool. All right, the next one is the Iron Legion. The Iron Legion is the select Praetorian Guard sworn to defend the Emperor and capital, which I think I mentioned a few moments ago. So they're the elite Imperial Guard. They are sworn to defend the Emperor himself, the Emperor's family, and the capital, especially in that order of loyalty. So they are very elite. They typically wear black lorica segmentata, which is that if you know what the Roman almost plate mail in a sense is lorica segmentata. That's what they wear. They're issued and they're given nice weapons, and so I guess if there's any drawbacks to them at all, you'd have to spend at least 3 months of service in the capital. Maybe it's only 2 months, but you can do that with downtime. It's up to your game master. So um, and that's represented the fact that you do have to keep guard. You do have to work garrison duty, essentially on the imperial capital of Laurentius every so often. The time that you're off, so that's the time you've given leave. Your adventuring would either represent you're being sent on a mission on behalf of the Iron Legion, or literally you're just given several months leave because you're an elite warrior. You do get a lot of vacation, lots of holiday. So yeah. The next one is Knights of the Sword and Rose. It's actually technically the Order of the Knights of the Sword and the Rose. So the Knights of the Sword and Rose are a highly elite company of warriors sworn to protect king and church. More specifically, this king is the High King of Eridorn, and really all the lesser kings. And church is in the sense of the sect of Saint Paladir, which is really the one lone god of Eridorn. Eridorn used to follow the druidic deities, the multiple gods of the Garans, and to some extent the Norrish and Scythian people. But now, over the last 250 years or so, they have really kind of gone along with this idea of Saint Paladir, a man who rose to godhood and escaped execution from the Laurentians on a flaming chariot pulled by seven actually, white horses, which some say might have been winged horses. So so that's the Knights of the Sword and the Rose. They're the elite company that protects the priest, the priest of that order, but also so they have a big duty. They're sort of protect the throne as well as the religion. They don't know this separation of religion and state doesn't really exist back then. It didn't really exist as much, and it certainly doesn't in this case. So so if you want to play a shining knight with a cool burgundy and white and silver surcoats and ride a cool destrier, and then this is the way to do it right there. They're fairly difficult to qualify before, but certainly not impossible. All right, the next one is the Monastic Order of Saint Paladir. That's the in full title, Monastic Order of Saint Paladir. They're also known as Truth Keepers, also called Truth Keepers, priests sworn to serve the lone true God, which I just mentioned, Saint Paladir. So Saint Paladir, so in the lore of Eridorn, when a person, which rarely happens, ascends godhood or ascends to a higher state, to the overworld, or what's also known as the heavens or the celestial paradise, they are considered a saint, or might even become a demigod. And so that's what Saint Paladir did. And now he has these truth keepers that are dedicated, these monks, and they're very much like uh, I don't want to say which order, Rosifarians. Well, no, they're probably more like Benedictine monks, but they're all kind of mixed together because it's not real world, and it is based on real world monastic orders from the late Dark Ages to early to Middle Ages. So yeah, so if you want to play kind of a cool monk who's they do a lot of prayers, but they're also kind of they do dabble in some magic. It's pretty rare. They're only really allowed to learn life magic, like healing magics and stuff. Occasionally, one might sneak off and learn some shadow magic where you can read omens and that sort of thing, or maybe even earth magic. But typically, that's mostly off limits. They can also be good at crafting things like monks really were back in the day when they weren't illuminating scripts and praying and such. They were learning another craft like brewing ales and beers, or they were learning different languages or learning a lot of lore. And so, yeah, so that's a cool way to do that. Next one is Order of the Golden Crucible. The Olden Order of the the Order of the Golden Crucible is a select order of alchemists and sorcerers from the Laurentian Empire. So here we go with the Laurentian Empire again, the big empire in the West, based on the Roman Empire. So they are a select order of alchemists and sorcerers from the Laurentian Empire. I think I already said that. They are quite elite. They are one of the few non-priesthoods that's kind of allowed in the empire legally to practice sorcery. But the way they kind of hide it is through alchemy. Well, not really hide it. I mean, they embrace the idea of alchemy. That's the big up and coming, the eighth magic of Laurentia, really. Where it's a little more scientific, it's a little more controlled. You can infuse things into potions and elixirs and oils and dust and powders and that sort of thing. So they're all about that. But at the same time, they do learn some other types of magic too, particularly fire, particularly the elemental magics, which support alchemy the most. So particularly fire and earth and water. So yeah, so they're kind of allowed to do that because they are an elite order, and the emperor sort of trust them. In fact, a lot of them occasionally will be employed as almost like war mages. So, in certain conflicts. So, yeah, that's a good way to do that. The next one is Order of the New Republic. This is another Laurentian one, Order of the New Republic, also known as there's some code names because this one has to be really underground or you're going to get completely killed. There's a whole campaign I'm running right now with some of my playtesters that have been with me for several years now with the game and playtesting and stuff that are involved in this thing, and it's really fun, a lot of intrigue, but they're starting to learn that it's pretty dangerous. I mean, not that they kind of knew it would be. So anyway, Order of the New Republic is a very secretive group of anti-imperialists in Laurentia. So they are pretty much dedicated to turning the Laurentian Empire into a republic. Sort of a la the old Pridonian Republic of some 1,300 years ago, over 1,000 years ago. So yeah, so they're also kind of known as the Order of the Fallen Eagle, the Order of the New Dawn, and they occasionally change name, because again they're trying to be covert. Some believe maybe there's actually several different groups, but a lot of people believe it's really just the same one, different cells of different groups that just kind of go by different names. So that's a way to do that if you want to be a member of that. The next one is the Order of the Shadow Knights. This one is a select band of Dark Shi warrior assassins serving Lithalor. So Lithalor is really the only sort of remaining recognized Dark Shi realm. I mean, there are pockets of Dark Shi here and there, it's said, but the last remaining sort of kingdom of any note is Lithalor, and even it's like hidden. It's very hard to find for outsiders for whatever reason, because the Dark Shi don't like being disturbed. So the Order of the Shadow Knights are this. So there's kind of a knighthood because it's elite, and they're given some power. Well, they are given a lot of power of like low justice in the realm, and sometimes they take it beyond because they're dark Shi, and sometimes don't really care. But they also learn because they're dark Shi, the covert arts of assassination. So instead of like knights in heavy armor on horses, they're well trained warriors, but they're a little more stealthy because they also work as spies, and assassins, that sort of thing. So yeah, and you have to be a dark Shi. So Pirates of the Crimson Skull is the next one. Pirates of the Crimson Skull, or the Crimson Skull Pirates. Large fleet of maritime outlaws scouring the Sunset Sea and beyond. So, as you might see there, they are an elite, quote unquote, well, kind of are, large, some say there's over 200 Crimson Skull pirate ships. Some say there's probably even double that. Nobody really knows for sure because they try to keep it on the down low. Yeah, Pirates of the Crimson Skull. They're known to they fly a black flag with a red skull and crossbones, or a grinning skull or a bleeding skull to scare their enemies. In fact, it even gives you a game mechanical bonus to intimidation if you're on a ship and fly such a flag, or it's painted on the sails. Is usually the way they do it. Flags aren't quite a big thing yet in this setting, but they're kind of getting there. People usually put things on sails and stuff. So yeah, that's a good way if you want to play a pirate from a pretty well known group and go pirating and raiding and that sort of thing. Arr, it's always good fun, it is. All right, the next one is Priests of Andorok, the Priests or Priesthood of Andorok. It's a priestly sect of the northern god of death and winter, Andorok. So yeah, Andorok, as just stated, is a particularly worshipped in Malovia, but really I think some players forget that he's worshipped. He's one of the northern gods of the main gods of the northern pantheon, whether it's Norland, even Scathia, even the Thraki sort of have heard of him. They might have a different name for him, but mostly he's really the kind of the patron deity of Malovia, and they're quite obsessed with him because they're obsessed with. He's also a god of dark magic and that sort of thing as well, and they're very obsessed with necromancy and magic and death and winter. So as you might imagine, some people claim he's an evil god, and probably is in kind of many ways in his beliefs, but keep in mind that death and winter are a cycle of life, and so a lot of the priests look at it like that, and the worshippers too. They know that that's you have to embrace the dark with the light in order to make the whole thing work. So yeah, if you want to be kind of a cool death priest who has some social power as well, particularly in Malovia, then that's the way to go. All right, next one is Priest of Agathon, and the rest of all these are priesthoods. Priest of Agathon, also known as Argathon. They're also known as Templars, a sect of warrior priests serving Agathon, or Argathon as he is called in some areas of the Pridonian Empire. Or not empire, but islands. So yeah, so this if you want to play a warrior priest, he's also known as the red god or the fire god, and associated with fire. So they definitely learn a lot of fire magic. The priests often they're very athletic. They train in because he is a god of war and conquest and competition. So a lot of the priests stay in good physical fit as well. So they're really kind of these Templars. That's why they're called Templars. They're kind of like warrior priests, really. Next one is Priests of Atores. The Priests of Atores. The Priests of Atores. I think they can only be male as well. Religious order dedicated to the Pridonian sun and bull god. So they are, yeah. So in the Pridonian Empire, the Pridonian people, it used to be, and some people still believe this, that the setting, by the way, has a red giant as a sun. So they believe the red sun is actually this big flaming chariot and this massive bull named as Atores, which was the prize bull of Pridonis, the chief god of the Rhodonites and now the Pridonians. This bull would pull the sun chariot across the sky like spot on order and cyclical nature, and that's how they told time. And so that's why Atores is not only the sun god and associated with bulls, but also associated with time and order, because time is order. That's how people keep appointments and things get orderly and that sort of thing. So if you want to be a priest of that, that's the way to do it. They're very orderly. They also are pretty good at like fire magic and some earth magic, and so yeah. Next one is Priestesses of Lucia. The Priestesses of Lucia. So they're all female, a female sect in direct service to Lucia, goddess of love and the arts. She's also a god of seduction, and associated with the lesser moon. But mostly her portfolio is love and the art, all the arts, particularly the performing arts, but also the fine arts. Her priestesses are they're very acrobatic. They're temple dancers. Um, they're trained in acrobatics. They're trained in. Most of them are very attractive. In fact, you have to have comeliness or some other thing as a talent to get in, because that's how they serve the goddess Lucia. So yeah, so it's a good way if you want to play a priestess who's good at sort of charming people, but also kind of acrobatic and athletic at the same time. It's a way to do it. Next one is there's only 5 left. Priests of Nepalos. The Priests of Nepalos. A priesthood in service to the Pridonian god of thieves and nighttime. So Nepalos is one of the 7 or 8 major gods, although he's probably kind of the last of the 7 or 8 major ones. But he's major enough to be included in the rules here. But this is a cool way to play a stealthy kind of priest. So because Nepalos is a god of thieves at nighttime. He's associated with owls, is kind of sacred to him. Associated with the a lack with the a new moon with the no moon in the sky, where it's completely dark. Those are like holy days. So yeah, so a lot of his priests are former or possibly even still active thieves or gamblers, other or harlots. You know, people that are more active at sort of night or sort of have covert lives. So that's the way to do it. Next one is Priests of Pridanis. Priests of Pridanis, a sect dedicated to the chief Pridonian god Pridanis, Lord of the Sea. That's right, that's the chief god of the Pridonians, all the way back to the Rhodanites. And if you're getting a Poseidon vibe from him, that's perfect because that's sort of what I wanted. He's not exactly like Poseidon, obviously. Copyright. No, I'm just but Pridonis is the Lord of the Seas, the sea god, associated with water and rain as well, but really pretty much the sea is his domain. And if you're a Pridonian, most of these city-states are just on islands, so the sea is around you all the time. So they grew up kind of like the ancient Greeks, with the sea being very influential to them. So that's why he's the chief god. So if you want to play a priest of Pridonis, if you want to have, they also have social power. They carry these tridents around, and they're they can be arrogant, but usually they're pretty cool. They're pretty communal based, and they do wear this sort of social power and renown, but a lot of them aren't really corrupted by it. But you can't be. It's possible. And they learn water magic. You know, it's like their main thing, as you would imagine. They're also pretty good at life magic, at healing, and eventually, if they get in the higher ranks, are allowed to learn death magic because he is that god. He is a god of life also, but also kind of associated with death. So the next one is the priestesses of Signa. The priestesses of Signa, a female sect of healer priestesses serving the northern sun goddess. So pretty much all female there. There's like a group called the Sun Warders, which are temple guardians that could be male, but otherwise, yeah, female. So Signa is a northern goddess that's associated with the dawn, with the sun, with warmth, and with secondary with fire, since it is the sun and warmth. New beginnings, spring, motherhood, that kind of stuff. So yeah, a very feminine deity. So they're really good healers. They're like the kind of renowned as like the best healers in the north. So if you want to play that, there you go. Two more left to go. The next one is the Priest of Titherius. The Priesthood of Titherius. Titherius. They are merchant priest of the golden god of commerce and wealth. Titherius is known as the golden god, is kind of one of his epithets, just like Agathon is known as sometimes the red god or the blood god. So the golden god because he's associated with commerce and wealth. His priests are often called merchant priests because they do. Many of them are former merchants or still even current merchants. They're really good at appraising things. They typically are trained in how to know what the common value of things are now. What's the going rate of things, even if it changes. And often they even set the value of things. Like they're kind of the ones to sort of know. Uh, so. Um, so yeah, it's kind of so it'd be kind of cool if you want to play a merchant who also has some priestly mysterious powers too. They're also allowed to wear wealth more openly. They still have to tithe. They still have to give a lot of what they earn to the temple. Not a lot. It's like 1/10, but to the temple itself, to the community, the sect. But yeah, so that's a good way to do sort of a merchant priest. Last one is the Shadow Hand. The Shadow Hand, a secretive organization of thieves and assassins based in Larentia, Larenthian Empire. Some say they go beyond the Larenthian Empire, like they've even crept into Eridorn, southern Eridorn, or Eridornum, which is the kind of Larenthian province of Eridorn that was sort of taken over about 12 years ago. Others, and some say they even show up in some parts of the Pridonian islands, so or in possibly even Ismondos, but it's not really for sure. I mean, really, their main power is in the Larenthian Empire. They, so yeah, they're an underground group of thieves and assassins. So it used to be just, as you would imagine, they're just like runaway people who they're outcasts from society. The reason they're called the Shadow Hand is because so it used to be a Larenthian custom and still is in some areas, some provinces, that if you're caught thieving, pilfering, stealing, you were branded a black hand on the top of your hand, or worse, on your palm. So it was so bad to where it was, you had a little bit of hand damage. It was hard to thieve again, and people also saw Mert could say like that dude was a thief. I'm not dealing with him. I mean, you could hide it, of course, but it was still done. So, so then eventually people got together that were being branded, and they kind of made their own group, and it just kind of grew and grew into. There's different cells of it, but they're kind of slightly networked and joined. So some say there's a central head person known as the Shadow Lord, or there might be several Shadow Lords that kind of control all the different groups elements. So yeah, so if you're looking at playing a thief, there's also a subgroup called the Shadow Blade, which is more like specifically killers, assassins. But the Shadow Hand will do some of that too. So they can give you your jobs as a thief, like go and I need to retrieve this or whatever. But you do have to give. I think it's also 1/10 back to the Shadow Hand itself. Probably don't want to let them down. So that's it. That's all the ones from the actual list. There are other elite groups and organizations in the setting, obviously, that didn't quite make it. Several others, and eventually, just through editing, and I was just like, there's just too many. I was trying to target the book at 400 pages or less. Came out exactly 400, or actually 399 if you don't count the covers. Um, so that was good. But so honorable mention that might come out in the Savage East, or maybe some uh, later product, or you can just create it your own, would be the Priest of Fragnir. Fragnir is the chief northern god. Warrior priests. So typically older men that used to be warriors that might have got injured or whatever. Maybe they still are in still pretty decent shape. And they learn the ways of Fragnir. They read the omens, and they'll fight alongside of warriors. And I think they could learn shadow magic and possibly earth magic, or no, water as well, because Fragner is also associated with the sea, a sea god, a god of battle. Another honorable mention might be the Wind Riders of Calenduril. So this is another Shi. So here you have the Order of the Shadow Knights for the Dark Shi. The Wind Riders of Calenduril, or Sky Riders, are actually the Aluna Shi. They are sworn to Calenduril, the last remaining sort of goodly sized Aluna She realm. And eventually they actually gain giant eagles. That's probably why I didn't put them in there. I don't really, honestly, I don't like people having flying mounts that much. Player characters, it's a little too much to keep up with. I'm not. Some people say because it's too powerful. I'm like, well, it can be, but it's really more like most of your characters are on the ground. This other person's flying around, and it just gets kind of slightly annoying sometimes. But if you want to allow that, that's the way to do it. And they do have to attain like the third or fourth rank from the beginning of the sector order before they can even get the mount anyway, the giant eagle mount anyway. Hippogriffs too are also used too, but that's usually only for the truly elite commanders. Let's see. Any others really quickly? Yeah, the priestesses of Sardona is another one. Sardona is another one of the 7 or 8 main gods of the Pridonians, goddesses in this case. She's associated with agriculture, animals and plants. So a reason she didn't quite make the cut is what I just mentioned. I didn't want to make the book massive, but two, they're similar, a little bit druidic. So if you really wanted to, you could use the druidic order. It's just that geographically they're really far apart. So I think that's it. There's a draconic cult that pops up every so often. So that's another one worth developing. But I think that's it. And one last note to sign off with, because this question comes up a little bit. So if you're a member of an elite affiliation, or one of these orders or sects or priesthoods or whatever, you start at the low rank. This question comes up, and it's written in the book, but I know it's confusing. So you start at the low rank. So even if you have the age or renown requirement, you don't get that until you actually earn it and play. And it's supposed to happen as a downtime action, or even during game. You can actually play out the ceremony if the player character hits all of that. But anyway, so you don't. For example, say if you have a renown of 13 and you're like, oh, I qualify for the third rank. I'm a captain already, or I'm a high priest already. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. You still start at the lowest rank, and you have to earn in game the next rank. And it might be very quick since you already have those qualifiers. But the only caveat to that is the adept talent. The adept talent allows you to start at the next lowest rank. So that means you're coming into play already having already went through the first rank of whatever order it is that you're in. So, or if you take the talent later on, that means you skipped ahead a little bit. So yeah, I think it's the last thing about I would say about that. Oh no, one last thing, because I don't think this is in the book. Actually, I think it is mentioned. Anyway, I'll say it anyway. Yeah, it is mentioned. It says that typically you can only be a member of one order or sect, but it says the game master is free to allow a second one to a player character if they qualify. And remember, they still have to balance the codes and tenets of both orders. Each order, when you look at the when you get the core rulebook and look at the each sect and order and organization, it's broken down into not only what you need to the prerequisites and the ranks and all the stuff that you get, cool stuff like that, but it also ends with like the tenets and codes and code of honor, code of conduct that you have to follow. So yeah, if you can balance the two and qualify for two different ones, and your game master's cool, you could be a member of two orders of sect. It does, I think it does say that three is right out. So the number of the counting shall be two. No, I wouldn't allow a third one. That's probably too convoluted. So I think it's enough that you would even get two. I think one's actually enough uh, to satisfy a character concept. All right, we're at 40 minutes. That's quite long, but I think it was chock full of information. So thanks for playing along. And remember, share and like and subscribe and all that stuff all the YouTube people say. Man, I'm just trying to get these numbers up, and I don't. It's just they're not. So please help out. So, right. All right. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will talk to you again soon.